Hey, are we here?
Hello, welcome.
Hey, are we live?
Yes, we are live.
Yay, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jen. Yeah, I can't hear you at all.
Sorry, we were all frantic trying to get it worked out. I'll shut off my stuff and give you.
Okay, you're all good. Thank you. Hi, you guys. We're like 15 minutes late, so let's get going. I'm Leigh Statham.
You're only 3 minutes late. It started
really?
at 3:10. Yep, you're good.
I'm not even on the right coast, so I don't even know. I don't know what time it is or what's happening. Awesome. We're only 3 minutes late. That's great.
All right, thank you so much to Leigh Statham for being patient while we worked out some technical difficulties. My name is Erica and I'll be assisting, and I have a quick bio to read. Leigh Statham writes books, poetry, short stories, and essays for all ages. She currently teaches English in North Carolina, and her latest novel, Girls of War, will complete her second series for young adult readers. She loves to cook, play Minecraft, and eat wild berries. Don't worry, only some of them have made her sick. And Leigh has a lovely presentation prepared for us today, and I know we're all excited for it. Please remember you can ask questions in the Q&A and to keep all comments in the chat respectful and appropriate and to avoid sharing personal information. And Leigh, I'll upgrade you to host and switch the time over to you.
Thank you so much, Erica. I'm sorry. I thought we started right at 5. I was getting really worried. I'm like, oh no, I have so much to talk to you guys about. And yes, Minecraft. I love Minecraft. It's super addictive. All right, so let's jump in here. Did any of you come to my poetry class in the fall last year for Teen Author Bootcamp? Anybody? Okay, that's totally fine if you didn't. Okay, great. I just wondered because they asked me to teach the same class, but I changed it up a little bit. So it's not exactly the same. And I went over and changed a few things. So let's jump right into that. I just didn't want anybody to be bored or disappointed if you've already seen this particular presentation. It is going to be different, I promise. So we're going to talk about polishing and publishing your poetry today. And the first thing I want to do is introduce you to my favorite definition of poetry. It's a literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinctive style and rhythm, a quality of beauty and intensity of emotion. How great is that? Is that not an awesome definition of poetry? It's like all wrapped up into one, right? And that umbrella falls over everything from Dr. Seuss to Shakespeare, right? It's like this whole group, this family of words that are full of emotion and intention. And I'm so glad to have you guys here today as part of that family. Let's see, I need to get the chat where I can see it. Okay, cool. All right, so I can see you guys. So, and while you're here, you clearly want to share your work, right? You guys are poets, I'm guessing, or you want to be a poet and you want to share your work. If you're like me, you have a journal full of stuff you've been writing your whole life, all your hopes and dreams, and some of it rhymes and some of it doesn't. Some of it's your worst days. But different ways you can publish your work are children's books, like Dr. Seuss, if that is your passion and you want to share those ideas with children. Children's books are almost 100% poetry, whether it rhymes or not. Individual poems, if you want to be like Amanda Gorman, our National Youth Poet Laureate, who writes these amazing stand on their own poems and publishes them. Or also novels in verse. Those are all viable ways of writing poetry and publishing it, selling it, and sharing it with the world. Let's look at picture books really quick first, and children's books. Of course, like Dr. Seuss and Shel Silverstein, these all rhyme. Good Night Construction Site and M is for Mischief is by Linda Ashman. She has a ton of great books. Her poetry, her rhyming, and her stories are just amazing. It's incredible the things that she can tell, and her meter and her rhyme is perfect. But if you're writing a children's book, and you want to use poetry in it, it doesn't have to rhyme. I mean, if you think about the definition we talked about, it's words that have specific emotions and strength and language to them. So it doesn't always have to rhyme. But if you do use meter and rhyme in picture books, if that's what the kind of poetry you want to write, it must be perfect. And I'll say that again. If you want to write rhyming picture books and have them published, your rhymes and your meter must be perfect. And you've all read books, I'm sure, where there's like a fudge or a slip and you're like, "Ooh, there's an extra syllable in there and it makes me feel uncomfortable." And then you've read the books where it just flows, right? Um, I will not eat green eggs and ham. I will not eat them, Sam, I am, right? See that meter and that rhyme. So, and these days, there's such a saturation in the market of authors and books. You really have to get that perfect. So just remember that. But it doesn't always have to rhyme, which is the good news. And this book, The Dress and the Girl, doesn't rhyme at all. It tells a story, but the words are so carefully chosen, it might as well be poetry. It's about a little girl immigrating to America from Greece, and all she brings with her is her dress. And her dress is her best friend. It's so beautiful. And it goes through and says, they wondered if now was the time for something singular, stunning, or sensational, for something extraordinary. And these lines are repeated throughout the story, and it's just beautiful. So that's a viable form of poetry and lyric writing, and a way to use your talents as a career. There's also novels in verse. Middle grade and YA are great. There aren't as many adult novels in verse. It seems to be a genre that's taken off more with younger audiences. These are just a few of the examples. There's these are kind of like the modern day epic. If any of you guys have read Gilgamesh or the Odyssey, those novel length poems that the Greeks used to write, this is sort of that kind of thing, but it's for our time. And it combines fiction principles with the beauty of poetry. So when you're writing these kind of things, you also need to go to the classes on fiction and make sure you know how to build and develop a character and a plot. But then you pull that out of all together with beautiful words that are carefully chosen and have deep emotion. And these are usually shorter than a standard novel. So if you're in a novel class and they're like, you have to have 50,000 words, that's not true with a novel in verse. It does not need to be 50,000. The last novel in verse that I wrote and shopped around to editors was 40,000 words, I think, or 35. It was about the length of a middle grade book. So, and that was a YA novel in verse. It was longer, on the longer side. So just remember that. Let's see. Let's keep going. And you sell these as you would a novel too. So you would try to get an agent, shop around to editors, and go that route, and look for editors and agents that represent and publish novels in verse. That's a really great market to go into. It's not quite as saturated as regular fiction novels. And there's plenty of room for new voices. Here's a few of the like best-selling middle grade novels in verse. Look at all these stars and awards, and I mean, like the critics love novels in verse. I don't know if you guys have read Kwame Alexander. Sorry, this is a little blurry. Or Jacqueline Woodson. Highly recommend checking them out. They're so good. And you need to read what you want to write. If you want to write a novel in verse, you better be reading them as often as you can. Here's some YA novels in verse. Hopefully you guys have seen these, you're familiar with them. They're just beautiful. I think that, personally, I think that the poetry in A Long Way Down and Sold and Crazy is top-notch poetry. I liked The Poet X. I thought it was a great story. I didn't think the poetry was that great in it, but that's just my opinion. If you're looking for like great poetry. Oh, nice. Out of the Dust. Inside Out and Back Again is great too. And then you can do individual submissions as well. And this is kind of fun because it's fast and furious. And those of you, I recognize a couple of names from the poetry collection contest. And that's exactly what, if you entered that, then that's exactly what this is. You get some poems that you've written, they just stand on their own. You put a few together. Yeah, hi, Emma Kirkman. You put a few together and you send them out. And you can send the same poems to a bunch of different places. So it's kind of nice once you work on like maybe a group of 3 or 5 and you feel really good about those poems, you put them in a document and you send them out to a bunch of different places. Commercial magazines, literary magazines, anthologies, or collections like our Teen Author Bootcamp poetry collection. Websites, there are websites that publish poetry, or just your mom's fridge, right? That's a great place to share your work. Submittable is an awesome place. Yes, like Alexander Hamilton. Submittable is an awesome place. This is a platform we used this year for Teen Author Bootcamp's poetry collection. You can go to Submittable and just type in poetry right here, and you'll get a huge list of like a never-ending list of places to send your poetry, and you can choose what looks like it'll fit best. And they'll tell you, we're looking for poems about family, we're looking for poems about dogs, we want poems from teenagers. But don't worry about if it's not a contest or a publication specifically for teenagers. You don't have to be an adult to enter any of these things or to have your work published. Never let your age get in the way of what you want to do. Okay. Okay, yes. Oh, sorry. And you know what? If you guys want copies of my slideshow, I'm more than happy to email this whole thing to you if you want. Or you can take a screenshot or a picture with your phone. All right, are you good, Emma? Woo, woo. Yep, you're so welcome. So Submittable is a great place to go to look for places to send it. They have poetry contests there. Go to Barnes and Noble and look at the magazine section. They've got a whole section that's like poetry, like Poets and Writers magazine is there. They've got a whole ton of stuff in the back of Poets and Writers. They also have an online database. And at Barnes and Noble, there's a bunch of literary magazines on the magazine rack. It's usually just a little corner, but it's so much fun. That's one of my favorite things to do, is just to go flip through those magazines. They're usually a little bit pricey. They're like $10 to $15, but Barnes and Noble doesn't care if you just look through it, and you can see what other people are publishing and if you maybe like it. I try to buy one like once a month, pick one up just to support the genre. And then I have a copy of one that I like and I maybe want to try to get published in. And then don't be afraid to send the same poem to more than one publication at a time. It's called multiple submissions and it's totally fine. Everybody does it. The publishers expect it, unless it specifically says not open for multiple submissions. So that means they want you to send your stuff to them and them alone, and they're probably cranky. So you might, I don't know if you even want to do that. Most everybody's fine with you like sending it out to everywhere. But when you start doing this, you need to keep a spreadsheet. And I can't tell you this enough. And when I first started sending out singular poems to different places, I would send out one poem to a bunch of places, and then like I would forget that somebody else had it. It would get accepted one place, and when your poem gets accepted, you need to tell all those other people, listen, this is being published somewhere else, so that they know to throw it out of their slush pile and move on. It's just like writerly literary courtesy, right? But then you'll know where your poems have been accepted. If you have a spreadsheet of where your poems have been sent, if it's accepted or not, like, did they get back to you right away? Did they give you good feedback? Not very many places give feedback anymore. A lot of places take a really long time. I've had one magazine had my work for like a year and they finally got back to me and they're like, yeah, we don't want it. So I made a note on my spreadsheet and said, don't submit to them again. They took forever and they didn't even accept it. So if you're doing individual submissions, keep track of where things go and where they end up. Because, and the reason I said this is once you get a bunch of those poems published, you can put together a chapbook and you can put together your own collection. And then you take that to an editor and say, look, these have been published all over. This is the one time in writing where you can get multiple publications out of what you're writing. If you write a novel and you self-publish it, it's kind of done. Even if you traditionally publish it, it doesn't sell very well, you can self-publish it, but then it's done. But with poetry, you can publish the same things multiple different places, then pull it together and do a chapbook, and then pull more together and do a collection, and it all builds on itself. So you really want to get your name out there in as many like reputable places as possible. But okay, so here's the meat of it. How do I know when I'm ready? How do I know when to share my work? So the first thing I'm going to tell you guys to do is write everything. Write all the words, get them out of your head, get them on paper. It doesn't matter if they suck, get them out. Write everything you're inspired to write. Always have something with you. I love to keep a little journal in my bag, but recently I haven't done that as much. So I just use Notepad on my phone. And whenever I feel inspired, I write a few lines, or I write down if I saw an image that I thought was weird and might be inspirational later. Write everything down. Write the poems that you hate later. Just write them all down. And then when you have time, you go back in and you look at those poems and you can see the ones that have potential. And you go through that poem, you start editing, and you need to make every word count. You make sure every single word is in that poem for a reason, doing a job and making it amazing. And then you send it out. Okay. You just let it go. And that's how you know you're ready. You write it all out, you pick the best ones and you fix them and you send them out. You kiss it goodbye. Now you're going to get rejections, right? So you get rejected, you go back to make, and you say, okay, what could I do better in this poem? I sent it to 5 magazines. They all said no. What's up with this? I still believe in it. I still love it. Can I change it and make it better? And then once you do that, send it to 5 more magazines. Or even if it's a picture book or a novel in verse, the same thing, you go back and forth. And we do this in novel writing as well. But these two go back and forth a lot. But just make sure that you're writing all the time, reading, writing. Don't put any ideas off as being dumb or not worth it. Get them out on paper and then look at them later. You never know what gems you'll find, especially as a poet, even if it's just like a phrase, like you write a 10-page epic poem about your dog and then you look at it later, you're like, that is so dumb. But look at that line about crusty paws or something. You're like, that's a good line. And you can build from that. Let's talk about making every word count. This is where you do most of your work. And we're going to go back to the definition. A literary work in which special intensity is given to the feelings and ideas, a distinctive style and rhythm, a quality of beauty and intensity of emotion. So there's a special intensity, right? I hate the blue thing. Expression of feelings and ideas, and a distinctive style and rhythm with a quality of beauty. Oops, I gotta go back. And intensity of emotion. So special intensity, expression, distinctive, quality. Now those aren't the bold words, but I think those are important words, okay? And as poets, I hope you can feel that when I say those out loud. That special intensity, I think we all have that in us. And we have a desire to express ourselves in a distinctive way and have quality work, right? So these are the important details: special intensity, expression of feelings, a distinctive style. You need to find your distinct style and do it with quality, a beautiful quality. And I just love those 4 points. And the way to get to this, all right, you want to get to this beautiful place where things are intense feelings, it's distinct and beautiful and quality work. The way to get there is you take all those things that you have written, and the first thing that I do with my poetry is I seek and destroy. All right, we play Battleship with the poems when we're ready to go into edit mode. Cut every single word that's not needed. You know what you want to say with your poem, right? Or you know how you want it to feel. You know the emotion that you're putting out there. If there's a word that doesn't get you to where you want to be, cut it. I don't care if it's an article. I don't care if it's a verb. I don't care what it is. Just get rid of it. And you'll know if you need it or not when you read back through. You'll be like, oh, wait, maybe I do need the word the right there. But 9 times out of 10, you won't need it. Look for vague words, anything vague, like um, pretty, far, ugly, and we'll go over those in a minute, but cut them, get rid of them, or highlight them, say, I can do better than this. Cliches. If you've heard your grandma say it, you probably don't want it in your poem, unless it's a poem quoting your grandma, right? Watch out for cliches, mark those up. We're gonna destroy them. Also, sporadic rhythm that distracts from what you're trying to say. If there's a rhythm to your poetry that um, if there's a rhythm to your poetry that needs to be broken at a certain point to convey what you're saying, that's fine. But make sure you're doing that on purpose. Don't just have your rhythm fall apart because you can't find the right words. Stop and take a look at that and see if you can fix it. Also, beef up the important words. Those are verbs, nouns, and adjectives. If you take everything else out, you're going to be left with some verbs and nouns and some adjectives probably. Make sure they're the very best ones, okay? Especially verbs. Verbs do all the work. Instead of, if you're going to use the word ran, maybe sprinted is better. Use strong verbs, verbs that are not used all the time, that can bring up the imagination and make your poem more interesting. Now we're to the great adverb debate. And I'm not going to hang on this very long. But I feel like J.K. Rowling is the one who killed adverbs forever. And she's not even a poet. But adverbs, a well-placed adverb can make a huge difference. But if you have too many adverbs, and you'll know, just search for ly. Okay, just search for ly. That's the fastest way to see them. Or the word very. If your poem lights up like a Christmas tree, you need to go back through and strengthen your verbs. Okay, a strong verb is much more important than 3 adverbs and a weak verb. Okay, now a well-placed adverb is awesome and can do a lot, but you don't want to rely on those like a crutch. You want to make sure you have really strong verbs instead of a bunch of adverbs propping them up. All right. Let's talk about vague words and cliches. This is how I feel, this little picture right here, when I'm reading poetry and editing for people and I run into vague words and cliches. I'm like, oh, you can do better than this. So some vague words are like good, bad, small, large, just your basic run of the mill, like the words you learn in kindergarten when you're first learning to read. I feel sad. I feel good. Like, that doesn't belong in your poetry. Seem, she seems tired, right? Actually, don't even use these in your fiction. Look, I look over there. She looks tired. Sad, happy. These are all words that if you open, I was trying to see if I have it here. If you open a thesaurus, there will be 500 other examples of these words and they will be better. So if you go through your poem, like just write your rough drafts, however you're going to write them, get them out of your head. But when you're going through reading carefully and closely, find these words and destroy them. Get out of thesaurus. Use thesaurus.com is pretty good, but I've tried a bunch of different websites and I don't know where it is right now, but I have a thesaurus that's like this thick. I got at Barnes and Noble or Amazon for like $10. It's hands down better. And it's rare that you'll find more in print than you will online. But if you're a serious poet, I highly suggest that you find, it's called the Word Finder. I should have had it out to show you guys. It's huge. It's a thesaurus. And it's gigantic and I love it. There's way more in that book than I've ever found online. So if you come across these words, don't feel bad that you use them. Sometimes it's just a placeholder for a better word. And okay, I know something bad is happening here. I'm going to put bad and then I'll come back and I'll fix it later when I've got time to dig through my massive thesaurus. Cliches. I see a lot of cliches in poetry, like the broken heart, bated breath, these head over heels, it's a lot of times in love poetry too. Like love poetry is not bad. Love is a huge emotion. It spans lots of different areas and different types of relationships. Of course, as poets, we're going to write about it. But we need to watch out for these cliches that have been used over and over again. Now, these are great to use if you're being satirical or maybe you're going to play on the words bated breath, and you've got a poem about like fishing or something. That's creative, and that's a great way to use a cliche, but don't put it in there when you're talking about the person you're in love with. Only time will tell, that's another one. Eyes like the sea, or lakes, or pools, or puddles. I can't tell you how many times um, I've read where people's eyes are compared to some form of water. I don't know why that is. I guess it comes from blue eyes. I don't know if I had brown eyes that I'd want it to be compared to a muddy puddle, though. It's funny, but it's overdone, and you guys can do better. And when you do come across these cliches in your writing, which we all do, I do it as well, you just mark it, say, okay, I can do better than that, etc. It's countless. There's countless cliches and vague words out there. Oh, nice. Emma Kirkman destroyed the phrase bated breath in her poem. I'm so proud of you. Enjambment. Let's talk about this really quick. Trying to get through this. I know I'm going really fast. I want you guys to be able to get to the final speaker. I know if you've had a long day too. And Christopher Paolini's so cool. I'm excited to hear him as well. But Enjambment is definitely worth talking about. Do you guys know what this is? Have you learned about this yet in school or on your own? Anybody? It's the continuation of a sentence without a pause beyond the end of a line, couplet, or stanza. That's the official definition. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh good. I can tell. Is this the slide you want, Maya? And again, I'll send you guys this presentation if you want. So yeah, while Maya's writing that down, let's talk about, oh, you got it. Okay, good. Talk about Enjambment a little bit. It's one of my favorite polishing tools as well. Once I've gotten my poem written and I have sought and destroyed all my vague words and beefed up my verbs and everything says what I wanted to say, and it's feeling really good. The next thing I look at are my enjambments, and that's the end of the lines. Okay, so this is Shakespeare, clearly. Do you love his little mask? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. So this is the end of his line right here, day. I don't know if I can highlight that. No, I don't know. Whoops. He ends at the end of his sentence here, right? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Question mark. That's the end of the line. Thou art more lovely and more temperate, period, the end of the line. And he goes on and writes like that. And people used to write poetry like this. Each line was its own sentence. But we've evolved. And this, what an enjambment is when you take a sentence like this, and then you chop it up and you look at it and you say, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? If I'm going to make this 2 lines, where's the best place to chop it up? Of course, we're not going to chop up Shakespeare. But then Percy Shelley, he started doing this, right? So these are not, this first line is not a sentence. If it was, how shall ever one like me? You'd put the question mark here and it'd mean something else, right? But, and when you read it, you're not supposed to stop at the end because there's no punctuation here. How shall ever one like me win thee back again? See how it changes the meaning when there's no punctuation here? And it's multi-layered. When you chop these lines up, you look at your poetry and you say, where am I going to end that line? With these first 2 lines, if you just read how shall ever one like me by itself, it sounds like he's really down on himself. Like, how is anybody ever going to like me? Right? There's that added layer of meaning, but you keep reading and it's like, oh, wait a minute. He's saying, how can someone like me win thee back again? Like, how am I going to get my loved one back again? But you've got that extra layer of meaning in there. You're pushing your reader to think something that's not actually on the page. And it's tricky and it's really fun. So you get double meaning out of your lines. With the joyous and the free, thou wilt scoff at pain. Faults, oh spirit faults, thou hast forgot all but those who need thee not. So he does it again with the last 2 lines. Spirit faults, thou hast forgot. Right? You could end there. You could have put a period, but he doesn't. Thou hast forgot all but those who need thee not. So you look at your lines and say, how can I chop this up? Like, if we go back to Shakespeare, if we say, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? It might be really interesting if you cut it up like right here. Shall I compare, like, and then have that be a new line, thee to a summer's, and then maybe day, thou art more lovely, or something, you know what I mean? You get creative with your word order. That's the last thing I do, is I mess with, once I get my words all really strong and where I want them to be, then I mess with the order. We're gonna look at my favorite. T.S. Eliot is brilliant and I love him so much. This is from The Wasteland. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and the desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. How gorgeous is that? And notice what he did. He ended his line with these action verbs: breeding, mixing, stirring. How does that make you feel? Like you're lingering just a minute on those action verbs to paint this really active picture of spring and what's happening in the spring. You're breeding, mixing, stirring these dull roots with spring rain. But when you read it, you don't stop there. You keep going. So it kind of plays with your head. It's putting like multiple layers into the reader's mind at the same time. Poets truly are word masters and magicians. So it creates complexity. It causes tension and drama. It helps move the poem forward. It enhances pacing and momentum. There's just a ton of reasons to practice enjambment and learn how to use that in your writing to your advantage. Plus, it's fun. All right, we're gonna look at this poem. It's by Anonymous, so I don't feel bad critiquing it with you guys. Actually, I wouldn't feel bad critiquing your poems with you either, but in this way, hopefully you all feel free enough to say whatever you want, and I'd love your input on this. We're gonna look through this poem and say, are there any unnecessary words? Are there any vague words? Are there any cliches? Is there a sporadic rhythm that distracts? Are there any verbs or nouns that we could beef up and use better ones? And could we improve the enjambments? All right, so here's our to-do list on the left. Here's our poem on the right. I'm gonna read it and I want you guys to make some notes and share in the chat what you think, okay? If there are, yeah, let's just do it one bit at a time though. I would love for you guys to paste in chat. Let's do it a little bit at a time so that it's not, so we can all get a look at it, okay? We'll do it, maybe we'll do it like a couple of lines at a time. All right, never enough, always replaced. You become numb to these things. They are a regular occurrence, and yet you still feel the twist of the knife. Every time it's mentioned, every time you're not enough, every time you're replaced. Until one day, the knife can twist no further. Your ears can hear no more of these comments. Your eyes can see the disappointment on their faces no more. Now, this poem has a couple of other things that I would point out to you guys if you want to write this down. It uses repetition right in the middle here. Every time it's mentioned, every time you're not enough, every time you're replaced, okay? If you're going to use repetition, the rule is that 3 times is considered intentional and 2 times is considered an accident. So down here, if you're going to repeat something 3 times, you might need to repeat this other down here 3 times. Does that make sense? Oh no, I'm so sorry, Savannah. Every time you're replaced doesn't flow. Yeah, okay, so I want you guys to find, is there an unnecessary word or an unnecessary line? Yeah, there's a lot of cliches. And like this is probably a rough draft poem that you'd find in your journal and say, okay, I remember how I felt that day. There's some good stuff here, but let's see if we can beef it up. So find a cliche. Actually, what is this poet saying? Like that's the first thing I ask myself when I'm reading and editing or building a collection or even my own work. Like, what is this poem saying? Never enough, always replaced. They're numb. These things are happening over and over again. The knife. It's very vague, right? The whole poem is very vague. Yeah, the knife can twist no further, and the use of numb, those are very, yeah, those are cliche. Never enough, that's very cliche. It's all very angsty, right? Yeah, it sounds like a poem about loneliness or isolation. Um, and the fact that like, what is the knife? Every time it's mentioned, what's mentioned? Are they talking about a knife? Why are they not enough? Like what exactly is I have a best friend who's like, what's actually happening? And I can hear her voice in there. Yeah. And a really it's a lockdown poem. It's poor anonymous. It's really important not to be vague in your poetry. The more specific you can be, the better your poem's going to be. If you can specifically nail down like some concrete images, I think a knife is a great image for a poem, right? What could we say instead of the twist of the knife? You still feel the twist of the knife. I mean, that's a decent enjambment right there, but it's a cliche. They enjammed a cliche. So let's see. Bailey says, if you only have something vague to say, don't say anything at all. Yes, I love that. I'm gonna get that tattooed right here. Plunge of the knife. Plunge is a great word. That's a great. You still feel the plunge of the knife. What about like the steel of the knife? How can we make this more like, there's not much imagery here. There's no color. There's nothing to touch or feel. Like they haven't used their senses. Well, I guess numb. Numb is a touch word, right? They did say hear and see, but those are probably banned words. Your eyes can see, your ears can hear. Well, duh, we know that. Ooh, the jab of the knife. What about the caress of the knife? You guys are attacking. What if it's like a slow move? It's a slow burn murder. Right? What if the caress of the knife? What about the beginning? You become numb to these things. To what? What are these things? Maybe it's bullying. Let's just say bullying. You become numb to the bullying, right? Instantly, you've got an image in your head, right? You can see a school playground or a hallway or a sports team, right? Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. Can you guys let's see. The saw of the knife. I love that if it's a serrated knife. Slow burn murder. You're very welcome. Until one day. Let's look at the last, let's rewrite the last stanza for sure. Until one day the knife can twist no further. Your ears can hear no more of these comments. Your eyes can see the disappointment on their faces no more. It could be anything from loneliness to drop kicking orphans. You're right. Hear the orphans anymore and see the disappointment on their faces. Maybe the writer's the one that's twisting the knife. The knife can twist no further. You've dug in as far as you can. Yeah. So if we replace this with until one day, well, let's get specific. Actually, I would just cut that or something. On Thursday, the knife can caress no further. What's a better way to say your ears can hear no more of these comments? I don't even like the structure of that sentence. What are they saying? Come on, you guys. You can help me out. Your ears. I don't even know. Let's see. You. Oh, yeah. Block out the haters. Oh, that's good. Your ears refuse to acknowledge their sound. You're personifying the ears, right? They've got a little bit of their own, what do you call that? The ears are now an entity. Your ears refuse to acknowledge their sound. What's better than sound? Be more specific than just sound. What's a better word? A more specific word than sound. Voices, taunts. Good. Sound is too vague, but I like where you're going. You stand by yourself, ignoring the chaos being flung at you. That sounds like monkeys at the zoo throwing poop. I love it. I love it. I love it. Ring. That's great. See, you guys are good at this. How about your eyes can see the disappointment on their faces no more? This is Yoda speak right here. I call this Yoda speak. Poetry, I write. It's where you put words at the end that should be at the beginning, or maybe shouldn't even been there anymore. Oh, let's see. Let's see. Emma rewrote this for us. Never enough, always replaced. You become numb to these things, regularly occurring, and yet you still feel the plunge of the wicked blade every time it's mentioned. Ooh, I like the wicked blade. You're not enough. Every time it's mentioned, you're replaced. I love that. The day comes that the knife can sink no further. Your ears become deaf to the words, your eyes blind to the look of disappointment on their faces. Oh, of course it got eaten. But I love it. I love how you said blind and deaf instead of ears can hear no more, eyes can see the disappointment on their faces no more. Look, the no more is all the way at the end. You need to bring it up. Yeah, great job. I still think that we could be more specific about what's actually happening, and you can do that with one word if you put like bullying at the beginning, or maybe even like dinner time or something. Or you could put a really interesting title on this poem that would push our brains in the direction that the poet wants us to go, to be more specific. Ooh, very nice. Their expressions betray their disappointment, but it no longer matters. I love that. That's really good. See, I knew you guys can do this. Sometimes it just takes a little push to see, oh, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, I can do better than that. So avoid, ooh, yeah, the wicked rasp of steel on flesh. So there really is a murder happening in this poem, I guess. Right? Let's see, what was I gonna tell you? Okay, so Yoda speak is bad. Don't use it, especially if you're trying to write children's poetry, and you'll see it. You'll see people that have moved the words around that's not grammatically correct, and they've squished it around to try to make it rhyme and make the meter fit, and that just doesn't work. You have to be grammatically correct, have correct meter and correct rhyme to sell a rhyming picture book these days. Just put that in your pocket if you want to do that as a living and be successful. I don't know, we've got 5 minutes, so I'm gonna look at Q&A. And here's my email. I'll leave this up here. If you guys want a copy of this presentation, I'm happy to send it to you. You can also get me at tabcpoetry@gmail.com. I'm trying to, it won't let me open the Q&A. Do you know how to do that?
If you like.
Yeah, can you do that? It looks like we've got a couple questions, but I can't see them.
Emma Kirkman asks, any recommendations on specific anthologies and collections for teens? And Savannah asks, is murder common in poetry?
Yes, murder is very common in poetry. Poets write about everything. I mean, we get away with everything. We published a poem in the collection this year that used the word nipples, and we had to talk about it and make sure, because we knew it was going out to a young audience, but it's poetry. It's beautiful. It was the right word for that poem, so we did it. So yeah, you can write about pretty much whatever you want in poetry, especially if you do a good job of it. If you choose the right words and it's beautiful, go for it. And then Emma, you wanted to know good anthologies or publications for young writers. I think that there's not a lot specifically for teens out there. There are a few things. Some of the teen magazines publish poetry by teens, but I think that you're just as well off reading things that are published for adults as well. I would tell you to read all of the classics. Read, if you recognize the name of a poet, go read some of their work. Read their most famous poems. Make sure you're familiar with it. You might not like it, you might not understand it, but at least look at it. Read the classics as much as you can. And then one of my favorite subscriptions that I have that I get, I think it's like $20 a year. It's Poetry Magazine. Um, it's by the Poetry Foundation. Oh, there's the questions. It's by the Poetry Foundation. This is January's issue. It's this really nice publication. They mail it to me like old school, but their website's amazing too. It's poetryfoundation.org, I think, or poetry.org. But this is really great if you want to see what's brand new and cutting edge. They do contests and classes, and you can read all the classic poets on their website, and you can also read, they have explanations for the poems. So if you're confused about a poem and you really, like if you really want to understand T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, they've got breakdowns there that'll help you. Let's see, how can you decide which criticism to accept and the ones that just don't really get it? You will know, my friend. I always take criticism. I look at what's being said and I think, does what they're saying make sense? Can I see any truth in it? Do they understand where I want to go with this poem? Do they see my vision? And do I need to humble myself a little bit and try it out? If you just can't, if it just doesn't make sense to you and it's not taking you where you want to go, then forget it. Because ultimately it's your choice. It's your art, it's your work, it's your choice. But I do try to like calm myself down a minute and look at things that are being told to me, because sometimes we get blinded by our own emotions and our feelings, and they're so big and it's hard to see, yeah, that's, your word choice here could be better. But you'll know, especially the more you write and the more you read, you'll know what's good advice and what's not. Sometimes too, I've gotten critique letters and I'll print it out, like actually on paper, and I'll take a big red pen and I'll cross out all the stuff that hurts my feelings. And then I'll look at what's left over and see if I can do anything with that. Don't let critiques hurt your feelings. It's easy to let it, because especially as poets, we put our whole heart and soul on the page, right? And for someone to come along and chop it up it's really painful, but you have to grow a thick candy shell. You have to be like the M&M, right? Yummy, delicious chocolate inside, but that strong candy shell on the outside. Do you recommend writing a poem on a computer, or should we do it on a piece of paper? Whatever feels best to you. I write most of my poetry in a journal in my bag, like I said, but sometimes I don't always have it. And then I take that, and when I'm typing it up, that's when I do a lot of my editing. A lot of my poems, rough draft, are on paper, but that might not feel right to you. It feels good to me. I could never do a novel like that. I write novels and essays too. I can't write longhand if it's a novel or an essay. I do my poetry longhand, but everything else I just type. It's faster when it's longer. I also use my phone too, though. And if I take notes on my phone, like I'm waiting in line somewhere and I think of a great line for a poem, I'll put it in there. And then when I go to my computer, when I'm actually working on my poetry, I type it from, I don't copy and paste, I retype it so that I have that process of looking at each word. Savannah, I'm so sorry you keep getting cut out, but there will be recordings available of all of the classes you attended today. You'll get access to those, so you guys can rewatch this stuff, and you're welcome to email me if you want to copy the presentation. And thank you so much for coming today and listening to me talk really fast about something I love.
And just a quick reminder before everybody logs off and joins into Christopher Polini's keynote address, there will be signed copies of books available in the bookstore. You can find that on the website, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. My new book came out Tuesday, and I'm so excited about that. Go check it out if you want to read some dystopian. I'll see you guys later, hopefully next year in person. Bye. Thank you so much, host.